One of the real fortunate things we have now when you're going through some catalog material is they was involved back in the days with Jimmy and Terry and not as familiar with it, and maybe not this song, but familiar with it. And right on, Dave.
Yes, back when dinosaurs ruled the earth.
Yeah.
Cut it out.
I've done a lot of work with Jimmy and Terry, and Steve Hodge was their main engineer, and he would be very proud of you right now.
That's special for me.
And their flight time was located in Minneapolis. And so represent, my wife comes in there. So when they got really busy, they would fly me in for a week or two or 3 or 4. And so not on this project, but the next project I actually worked on. So, but I'm very familiar with their production style and stuff. So the first many questions. I mean, the most noticeable thing about this track, I don't know how many people are New Edition fans, but Mr. Telephone Man, you know that song?
Yeah.
Ray Parker produced it. It's a great song. He wrote it and produced it. But it's, juvenile in a good way is how I would put it. And then 2 things happened. Jimmy and Terry came to produce this track, and Johnny Gill replaced Bobby Brown. So that first vocal that comes in, it's just so much more mature, adult. Take it away.
Yeah, I mean, where do I start? I've been working in the catalog space for some time, and I've learned a ton. And the number one rule for me when I work in catalog is to not just know the music, but know the history and know the people, and bring them in at any given point when I can. So it was through Universal, and we were fortunate enough to bring in Jimmy Jam and have someone that was there, the producer, to really kind of like critique and make sure that I'm not doing something crazy, right? But Jimmy Jam, I've sat with him several times, and I think every time we sit down, we speak for like 3 hours, and he goes deep into like these stories on like how things was, and he's one of the guys who he really looks forward when it's like forward thinking about innovation in the future. And I feel like he's someone that really passed the baton down to like guys like me who are new and up and coming, and really gave us our flowers, because there's a gap in generations, I think. And I think it's all due to just how the industry is and corporate. And it's tough, it's tough to kind of just say, hey, like, you guys take over, you should do this. And I just feel Jimmy was one of the people who always looked at the younger up and coming guys and said, yo, whatever you need, you're a resource, I'm a resource. Let's make whatever happen. So we got into this, and, I mixed the project fully, and then we sat him in to sit down and listen to everything.
Before you get to that.
Yeah.
Back in, the dinosaur time, we were not making stems. Stems were, every once in a while for a film, we would make stems. So what he's talking about first, you have to go back to the multis.
Oh, yeah. So I was just explaining this, and you called me out on this on a Zoom, which was funny. So he's like, what was the mix material like? Because you didn't have stems. It's like, we didn't make stems for that. And I was like, oh shit, yeah. So he knew right away. So like the multi-tracks was available via the label in the vault. They do this cool thing where they go to, I don't know if they went to Iron Mountain for this, but they go to this underground world to get all of these tapes and multi-tracks and stuff. And they digitize it, and, we do what we got to do. So I got the multi-track, which is the raw stem. This is the most original. Even like, I even feel like a lot of the stuff you guys probably did wasn't available on those stems. On the multis, right?
Well, here's where it gets interesting, because back then, dinosaur days, we didn't even comp as much as we did.
Yeah.
So there were board mutes for comps. Instead of bouncing something and losing a generation, we would do board mutes, and that's where the minefield lives.
Right. So it's interesting. So I had to pretty much take all the multi-tracks, take the original master, and mix the multi-tracks again to match the master and then create stems from that, which is literally impossible. Not gonna lie to you guys, it's impossible. But with, I guess, taste, technology, theory, and also history of just knowing the music, you can really craft something really cool and just being open. I think Jimmy was always open to just the modern kind of like way of doing things. So I think that worked in our favor with this project. And I remember, man, I was like, how do they get that late reverb? Like, how do they do, like, what were they using? Compressors, what boards? And I remember, like, if I couldn't find information online, like written, like I would like look at pictures and like zoom in on stuff. Like, oh, that's what they use.
Yeah.
I got to try that. I got to find that plugin. So yeah, it was an experience, and I mean, to be able to bring it to life through my ears and the way I perceive it, it only shows just, how legacy and how the past meets with like now and forward to the future. So
That's very cool.
yeah,
Yeah, because I did a legacy project with Jam, and I have Steve Hodge and I had pretty much the same setup. 480 to 24, even type 2016. So, but still, when I would go back and try to recreate one of his mixes, it was like,
and you had it.
Jesus. And I knew everything, but still, it's just, there's infinite variables when you start mixing, no matter how much information you have. And so here's a question that I'm fascinated by, because you're, a young producer, well, young, relative,
Younger.
relative to some. And so when you go back and see some of those original productions, are there things that,
Man, listen, I tell people, I was in the other room saying, I have no business opening up these sessions. Like the amount of just like magic that are in them, it's honestly an honor to be able to do something like that. And I didn't know that's what I was signing up for when I started this. I was just like, oh, Atmos is cool. Let's have a circus. Like, let's, put things everywhere. But I had no idea I would be going into these archives. And, I'm a producer, an artist. I make music, produce for other artists. All that stuff did for me was inspire me heavily, and it changed my perspective on music creation. Um, this album, particularly with Jimmy, was cool because, when he came in to sit down and listen to everything, he didn't really give me notes. Like if it was something that needed to be changed, it was weird. Like he would say, like it would be a section of like Johnny Gill, and he'll be having like his like solo like harmony or whatever, and he'll just say, this needs to be up a lot louder. And I'll tell you why. Because when we were recording it and we did this happened. And I was just like, what? Like, this is crazy. So we literally dove into like story time. And it was supposed to be like an approval mixing session.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was just fascinating. I think that's such a great approach when it comes to music, because I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of nervous about doing this, because I'm like, man, this guy knows it. He knows it. Like, there's nothing that I can get away with. Like, I can't even fake this, But his approach on just music and theory and history, and aligning every step, every part of it to a story, it was like a magical moment that made me feel like I wasn't even mixing anymore. Well, like we were just in a time machine. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So yeah, it was great. It just advances me as, a musician of everything, an engineer, to just forward thinking. And, I even, I was even asking him, I'm like, yo man, like, what keyboard was this? He's like, well, this was the D50, this was this. And he was like, we never really used to write, like, who put that keyboard there? Cause like I got lazy. I just used to type in keyboard. Like I got tired of putting
Exactly.
And even before that, before this album, he would say things and he was like, yeah, when we were working with like Janet, all of this stuff first off were like demo stuff, which blew my mind.
Yeah.
And then he also said like, we weren't really like, Pro Tools wasn't a thing. Like we didn't see wave files. We didn't have tempos, like none of that stuff. And when Pro Tools started and it became a visual thing, you know, everyone was submitting their records and they would go to Jimmy and be like, wow, like the wave files on your songs are like inconsistent. They're just like, they're like, and he's like, yeah, because we're just doing things off no tempo. We're just jamming. And that goes to like the whole theory with music and the feel. You know, I was watching like a Jeff Ellis thing last night. He was talking about, you know, seeing the screen and how it affects you when you mix. I never thought of things that way. And I always was like, yeah, I have a very good respect for analog. I think I came up on the tail end and I'm like a hybrid kind of guy. Still not like advanced as I want to be, but I have so much respect for the analog guys because like that feeling is just like you're closing your eyes, not looking at anything, and you're just literally listening to the harmonics. It's like, it reminds me of church. I grew up in church as a kid. And I hated church. I didn't want to sit still. I didn't want, but like when the music came on, it was just like I was cool and I was just listening and just vibing. You know?
Amen. The late great Ed Cherney, I think, was the first one to tell me, "Are you an engineer or an engineer?" You were like, "Oh wow, that was deep. That was deep."
That's deep.
Yeah. So yeah. So also, the thing about Jimmy and Terry Productions, I mean, you can feel it in this track. I mean, it just feels like a warm hug. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And so all their stuff is about feels. I mean, I got some tracks to mix by them where they would just be jamming as they did.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jimmy would be on the, you know, OB8 or something, and Terry would be playing a keyboard, and one other person would be in the room just, you know, jamming. And they would record that down to stereo on on the multi.
Yep.
And then they'd start overdubbing and say, "Oh, we'll get back and replace that stuff, you know, at some point." Of course, it could never be recreated, ever.
Yeah.
And so numerous tracks I'd get from them were the basic track, which is stereo, and then all, you know, two to-which machines of overdubs.
Wow.
So yeah, it was crazy stuff like that.
It's wild. It's wild. And so, yeah.
So as far as the immersive thing, when you approach this, as far as, you know, there's a lot of opportunity with the harmonies and the multiple lead singers. So did you kind of just freestyle it, or did you have any idea of a placement of heights, sides?
Yeah. There's a formula to how I mix, specifically in catalog. I like to lead catalog with a real preserved kind of approach. I put things where I think they should be, but I start with the LCR, which is literally the foundation of everything, right? That's like what's holding everything. I make sure the LCR is just like my master reference, sonically. Once I'm there, then I get to have a little fun and kind of pick and choose where I want things to be, you know, ambient. And with this record, from what I remember, the vocals were like key for me. I think Johnny Gill's vocal was like so dramatic in a good way that I had to really kind of toggle between the two to make sure that he stood out, because he naturally stood out in the record. And what I did outside of that wasn't a distraction. So I would kind of like just take different background vocals and like just test them out. So I'll try one, but BG1, okay, that's what this sounds like. BG2, and things that like, and I would play it with Johnny Gill stuff, right, and compare it. And if it's not too overpowering, I'm like, okay, this belongs in the immersive space because it's not too distracting. I can soften it up. I can make it not so harsh, and it could be more pleasing to the ear. And anything that was very dominant, I kept it in the front, you know, just to kind of like lay with Johnny Gill. And then when it came to like the instrumentation, I mean, it was just, I was soloing stuff and literally just listening to it for like hours, like geeking out, like, oh my God. Like I was with the A&R and I'm like, you can like make a song out of just this right there, you know? And I think being a fan of the music definitely influences like my mixes a lot. But, you know, when it came to the synths, I knew Jimmy, like, and the big deal with the keyboards, that was like something that would be very well looked at. So I'm like, I need this to be in a cool place. And I just pictured like them playing and like right here in the front, right in the front, right?
Yeah.
And then low end was a big deal for me, and it always is because that's like the pulse and the heart.
And that's one of the questions I had, because, you know, historically, we can get away with, I think, more low end now in general.
Yes. Yeah.
So were you, and a lot of that is, vinyl history.
Yeah.
To keep it from jumping out,
Mhm.
we were limited.
Mhm.
And so were you afraid or just, was there any fear?
No, I mean, low end is just my thing.
Yeah.
Like I love really deep, nice bass. But it's funny, I was into just mixing a lot of hip hop stuff and making hip hop music where low end is like literally overpowering everything, right? So when I got into catalog, I had to kind of understand that you had to think a little bit different about the low end and actually really mix it. Like really. So, I would call like a lot of my analog friends or like, more experienced mixers and mixers of different genres. And I would say like, I like the bass in this, but like, how do I control it? Because it's a little crazy,
Yeah.
and learning how, I mean, the low end is the key to everything, right? They tell you, people judge you based off of how good you are with the low end of the song. And I think learning the transitional periods of how low end is used in different genres at different times is like something that's just, if you have the opportunity to see it, understand it, and work in it, it's like something that you'll have forever. You know what I mean? And not everyone can get that opportunity. So I'm really blessed to be able to work through the different life cycles of music in that formality. And it just made me a much better engineer, like very fast.
Yeah.
Very fast.
Nice. And that's a beautiful thing about, legacy projects.
Yeah.
It makes you think differently, because also, time wise and genre wise, it just puts your head in a different space because you get locked into working the same type of people, the same kind of projects, and just kind of break that mold. That's what I like about the legacy too, also.
Yeah. And then, you get a little creative control, and like the A&R is like, let's do what we got to do in this, but like, do what you like to do too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's all vetted. So it's like, I could do, mix wasn't what it first was from the last deliverable. I could play the original one, just hear drums slapping like crazy, right? But like, I had to get that out of me first.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
and I think that's, I was explaining about drums on a like orchestra type record that had soft drums in it. And I remember I was working with, it was with her. Jimmy is really familiar with. And I remember sending them back the first pass, and like the drums were like slapping like a trap song. And they were like, yo, what are you doing? But it's like, let me get it out of me first, and then let me tone it down. Let me go to where it should be.
You always dial it back. Uh-oh.
No, you see that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming, everyone.
Another question.
Yes. No, I'm going to make sure we have time to listen to the track.
I want to listen to the track
Because it's on the correct side of dope. That's what I like to say.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, that's really it. This was, I think every legacy project comes with a unique experience. If you ever get a chance to work on anything in that realm, I mean, I didn't take it as serious as I do now because obviously I just didn't know what to expect. But it's probably better. It's the thing to have, the experience to have as like a musician, to understand how things were from time and transitioning into now, and then being able to meet halfway. You know what I mean? And that goes into my whole thing about the generations from when you guys was mixing to us now. Like, I always wanted to have like somebody to be like, hey man, like this is not how you should do it, but I like it. Let's just meet right here. We need that a lot more than ever. And I think Jimmy it was a heartfelt session that I really, really, really appreciated. And I expect more to come, and I expect to just bring that same nature of the business to the next generation coming up.
There you go. There you go. Yes.
Let's hear the song. If you guys want to come off the stage, if you ever saw that.
No, I'd rather make myself a present.
Yes.
No.
Yes. No.